There's a rapidly growing segment of the economy that sees value in the doing along with the having. We've been calling this the experience economy. People are looking for the authenticity of a personal experience. Spending your vacation working on an archaeological dig in Africa, for instance, is a good example. You leave the dig with the feeling that you have participated in something interesting. You leave with something beyond the tangible. In the world of craft and making, the experience can also add value to an object. Take the wedding ring workshop franchise, for instance. Couples come into the studio for the mentored experience of making their own rings. The symbolism of those rings goes through the roof. Our next speaker, imported directly from Toronto, Lara Bazant, taps into this experience economy. Lara is an entrepreneur who brings the studio into the boardroom or the living room by sharing the experience of craft and making at team-building corporate events and private parties of all sorts. In so doing, Lara is able to market her own work as well. In her words, the product and the experience are intertwined. Please welcome Lara Bazant.
Thank you. So my ultimate goal as an artist is to change the way people think, just to affect their thinking process in some tiny way. And I have a feeling that that's probably the goal of some of you as well. So hopefully by the end of all of our presentations today, something will have changed in all of us. As Andy said, I was invited here today to talk to you about my jewelry redesign workshops. I'm going to tell you how I came up with the idea, what I did to implement it, and why it works. Let's start with how I came up with the idea. Well, it was a process. It didn't happen overnight, and it started out with a very simple need, the need for money. In the fall of 2010, I decided to take the leap from running my jewelry business in my home studio, my very chilly vestibule, to opening a studio and showroom in Toronto's trendy distillery district. So at first that was an amazing experience, total dream come true. I was very inspired, was doing lots of new work. But then after a few months, suddenly, the rent went up. And it didn't just go up a little bit, it went like way up. So I had to think of new ways to make ends meet if I wanted to keep that wonderful dream come true studio. So I looked to my transferable skills. And I had done a little bit of teaching in the past, but what really stood out for me was the year prior, in 2009, I had taken a volunteer excursion to northern Uganda, and during that time I taught orphan teens leadership skills. And what actually ended up happening is I became more confident in my own leadership skills. And when I returned home, I really had the feeling that I was meant to help people. So when I decided that teaching was the way to go for me to supplement my income, I had to take a look around at what was already being offered. So I did some research, and what I found was that in Toronto, mostly what was being offered was silversmithing and glassmaking courses. So make your own band ring, make your own wedding ring, his and hers, as Andy was saying, glass fusing in a kiln, and glass flame working workshops, which are all really great. I've taken some of those myself, but I wanted to do something that was different, and I didn't want to do what everyone else was doing, and I also wanted to save on costs. I didn't want to spend a whole bunch of money on new supplies and equipment. So I decided to focus on where my unique talent lies, which is redesigning women's old costume jewelry. I find in the process of doing this, I've been doing this custom work for a number of years now, and in the process, it always ends up in a contented customer. Not only that, but I find that everyone really seems to have this inner designer waiting to burst out. So people tell me, oh, I'm not creative, I don't draw, I don't paint. But then I get talking to them a little bit, and they talk about this really elaborate dish that they're going to cook for dinner that night, or they can't wait to get started planning out their garden for the spring, or they love to experiment with their style, their fashion, and these are all creative outlets. So I thought it would be a great idea to let people harness that creative energy in a different way and experience it with their friends. So the first thing I needed to do to implement the course was to figure out who I was going to teach it to. And public classes were a given. I knew I could obviously invite people to my studio and teach the class. But when you're teaching the same workshop over and over, it can start to get hard to fill the seats after a while. So I decided to go corporate, because that's where the money is, right? We hope. So luckily I'd had a little bit of experience in the corporate world myself. I had spent 7 years as a corporate graphic designer before starting my jewelry business. And during that time, I really experienced both the highs and lows of corporate culture. So in a nutshell, the teams that were the most productive were the ones who were given a chance to bond. And the teams that were the least productive usually had some kind of a low morale due to politics and competition, or a management style that wasn't really gelling for them. So I really wanted to offer jewelry design as something to bond people in the workplace, because when I was in the corporate world, jewelry design was my creative outlet. So I wrote a curriculum based on design fundamentals, wire working basics, and deconstruction and reconstruction. I used actual examples. This picture is of the board that I use when I'm teaching design fundamentals, but I actually show people pieces of jewelry and teach them to look beyond the design of the full piece into the individual elements to see what they can draw out to make something else. When I wrote the curriculum, I also created a handout so that people can take it away with them. And it has a resource list so people know where to shop for tools and supplies and that sort of thing. They can continue afterwards. I decided the best structure of the class would be small scale. So minimum 5 people, maximum 8 participants. That way I could give really good individual attention to everyone, and also that they could interact well with each other, because the group dynamic is very important to this type of class. The teaching aspect lasts about 30 to 45 minutes, depending on how easily they pick up the techniques. And then that gives them a good chunk of time to work on their designs, because the class is 3 hours long. I provide inspiration to my participants in the form of music, put on a little upbeat playlist in the background. I do that in my studio. I'm teaching the public classes. When I go to the corporate classes, I encourage team leaders to bring their own playlist. And I also provide inspiration in the form of magazine clippings. So when I first started teaching the class, I put all the magazines in a nice, neat little pile at one end of the table and said, go look through the magazines to get inspired. But people were really kind of hesitant to do that, and it took them a lot longer to figure out what they were going to do. So I started putting the pictures of designs in between each participant. So everyone had 2 pictures on each side of them, and they'd be peeking at these things while I was teaching. So by the time they were ready to create something, they were like going much faster. They were raring to go. And of course, I go around the table helping people too. For tools and materials, I basically purchased 8 sets of very simple tools, wire working tools, so round nose and flat nose pliers and wire cutters, that sort of thing. And of course, the point is for people to revamp their own jewelry. So they're bringing their jewelry. That really saves me quite a bit in material costs. Well, I also provide base metal findings like jump rings and chains and assembly sort of stuff for them to finish things up. But those things aren't very expensive. I get just wire from the hardware store in different thicknesses. I tell them on the resource list where they can get metals that are more precious, but to practice, we start out with wire from the hardware store. So a really cool thing that evolved after I was teaching a couple of classes is the treasure box system, not unlike the take a penny, leave a penny system at your local convenience store. So what that is I have this little treasure box thing that I got as a souvenir when I was on vacation, and when people are finished their design, they're like, oh, I don't need the rest of these beads and stuff. I'm just going to throw it in the garbage. I'm like, no, don't throw it away. Put it into the treasure box. That way, when the next class shows up and they're looking for something to fill in their designs, they can go pick something out of there. So that turned into something really fun for people. For pricing the classes, someone once told me I should not be teaching for less than $100 an hour. And I thought that sounded fair. So for a 3-hour class, like I said, it's a 5-person minimum, so it's $60 per person. And then for the corporate classes, it's $75 per person because I'm going on location, and there's a little bit of transportation cost, and it takes me more time to set up as well. I created a marketing strategy that included both social media and face-to-face networking. Initially, I selected a few days throughout the summer to teach the classes. and promoted them on my email list, my blog, LinkedIn, Facebook, yada yada. And I offered early bird discounts, so sign up by this date and you'll get 10% off. I also have a brochure, like a one-pager, that gives an overview of the class, and I give that brochure out when I'm at shows, and I keep it at my studio for people to pick up, but I don't actually put the brochure on the internet, because I feel like it's something that I need to talk to people about in person if they're really interested. It's a little bit too much information to put on the website. So when I say face-to-face, I mean both word of mouth and actual networking events. So the way I create sort of buzz with the classes is while I'm teaching, say, a public class, I mention when they're working away, I also offer this as a corporate team building exercise. It's a really good way for people to bond within the company. And then when I'm teaching the corporate class, I also mention, this is a great thing to do. You and your girlfriends get together, come to my studio, and have a bachelorette party or, bring some wine and have some fun, get together, catch up. So I'm always talking about it back and forth. I also do networking events. So I go to women's business associations, breakfast meetings, evening events, that sort of thing. And I get in front of people, like face to face. I really, really feel like it's important for people to see who I am and listen to what I'm saying in person before they're seeing what I'm doing on the internet. So why did this work? Well, part of the reason it worked was because there was a transformation, a change in thinking. There was a shift with the participants from shy, hesitant beginner to proud designer, part of a group dynamic. Lots of aha moments going on. Everybody goes home with a finished piece. Sometimes 2 or 3, depending on if they're on a really good roll. And this leaves them with a tangible sense of satisfaction and something that they can talk to their friends about. Oh, I had this necklace from my mom and these earrings from my grandma, and I took them all apart and I made them into this bracelet, and that's so cool, and you should go take that class too. But the most remarkable part of the whole concept was that the classes were not the only new revenue stream. I created more jewelry sales by giving away a coupon. So the method of distribution for this coupon is really important. What I did for the corporate classes is I encouraged them to sign up for my email list, and then I email them the coupon, which they then have to print out and bring to my studio. So that gets them into my community. They're on my email list then, and then it also gives them an excuse to come and see me in my studio. For the public classes, the classes that I'm teaching in my studio already, I wait till the very end of the class and then hand it out and say, feel free to do some shopping on your way out. And the jewelry that I'm offering the discount on is made using more advanced techniques than what they've been doing in the class, so they have more appreciation for the craftsmanship. It's funny, there were a couple naysayers out there who told me I shouldn't be teaching jewelry classes because I was going to lose customers if I'm teaching them how to make jewelry. But take that, naysayers, because it created the opposite effect. I got more customers and I gained more credibility for my work. So what can you take from all of this? Well, if it wasn't clear so far, I'm going to spell it right out for you. If you're going to teach something, it better be something you care about, and you have to actually want to teach it. I know that sounds like really stating the obvious, but I have had teachers out there it really seems like they're only teaching because they feel like they have to do it. And when you're happy and passionate about what you're doing, as we all know as artists, it shows, and that's how you get more referrals. Like any good marketing strategy, you need to make it about the unique qualities that you bring to the table. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. Obviously, I did not reinvent the wheel with my jewelry classes, but I did make it about what I was good at. And then when the people are there in the class, you need to make it all about them. Ask questions, get feedback, and listen objectively. Your customers will tell you exactly what they want. In fact, sometimes they'll maybe tell you more than you want to hear. But that's okay. You just have to listen, take it with a grain of salt, and then you can improve over time. It's not going to be perfect the first time. Sorry, perfectionist jewelers out there. But If you give it a few months and go through some trial and error and persistence and resourcefulness, you will achieve success with your brand new Purple Cow idea. The end.
We have time for a few questions. I'll start. Laura, do you charge a materials fee? Or do you offer any precious metal findings or jump rings or anything like that?
No, people have asked me if they could use some of my materials. Sometimes they peek, like if they're in my studio, they peek over at my jewelry bench and they're like, oh, can I use some of this silver stuff? And I'll show it to them and say, you know, you can get it at this place. But for now, we're just practicing with base metals.
My name is Dana Casera, and I'm from Seattle. I have a studio, a teaching facility in Seattle. So it's interesting to me that you say that 5 to 8 students is your optimum, because I always felt like that would be too small for a corporate situation. And then I just wonder how you actually make those contacts and make that come to fruition.
The corporate contacts I mostly make through networking events. Like, I'm a member of the Canadian Association of Women Executives and Entrepreneurs, and I go to their events, and some of them are like really early in the morning, but I go there and smile. And yeah, the executives and entrepreneurs, right? These are a lot of women in the corporate fields. Yeah, I know it would seem like 5 to 8 people is too small, but it really, like, it wasn't a team building exercise for huge teams. It's for like smaller teams, like individual departments.
Hi, I'm Lisa Lowe. I was wondering, have you applied for any grants since starting your program? Have you had to look for external sources of money to help supplement?
No, actually, I've never had to do that. One of the other ways that I didn't mention that I was able to keep up with the expense of the studio was I subleased the space. So I share my studio with other people, and then I have a whole bunch of different ways I sell my jewelry as well. But I've never... a long time ago, when I was first starting out doing the jewelry business, I tried to apply for a grant, and I got rejected, so I never tried again after that. But maybe I will.
Hi, my name is Miranda. I was just wondering, before the classes happened, how you clarified to the participants what kind of jewelry that they can remake, because I imagine some of them might mistakenly think, oh, I can bring grandma's old gold jewelry in and do something new with it, when it seems like it's mostly beaded for the most part.
Well, I encourage them, yes, on my brochure, I say like beaded and chain types of pieces work best. Like I do say that on the brochure. But I'm also clear in the brochure that it's, you know, it's like beginner techniques, that we won't be using fire or, you know, I'm pretty clear about that. It's for all levels, and it's a beginner class, and we won't be using like precious stones. Although people can bring their old rings and things like that and string them up in different ways, or make a bracelet out of it or whatever. They can make something precious into costume if they get creative with it. I have received a lot of press as well, and I feel the exact same way as you do. And I even created a new website that was responsive, where I put the links like in each product, so as seen in blah, blah, blah. And like, yeah, with your coverage, it's a total crapshoot. You don't know if it's going to help you or not. And I don't know if people are going to like me saying this, but I had sort of a different idea of the way that I wanted to run my business and the way it was going. And then I started sharing my space with a fashion designer. And I was like really all about the creative, and she was like really about the business. And I learned a lot from her. And one of the things she said to me was she had this mentor that told her, you are not in business to promote yourself, you're in business to make money. And I kind of was just sitting there like stunned when she said that to me, because for so long I was like just trying to get coverage all the time, but it wasn't always translating into sales. So it's just sort of a different way to think about it. Thank you.
This concludes the lecture, Bringing the Purple Cow to Market, Tapping into the Experience Economy, by Lara Bazant, from the 2013 SNAG Professional Development Seminar titled Sacred Cow, Purple Cow, Cash Cow. There are 5 additional presentations with recorded audio. An introduction to Sacred Cow, Purple Cow, Cash Cow by the organizers Andy Cooperman, Bridget Martin, and myself, Harriet Estelle Berman. The Unexpected Purple Cow, Pop-Up Stores and Alternative Exhibition Spaces by Natasha Granatstein. Purple Cow Documentation via Video and Photography by Rachel Timmons. Justin Hartzman and Jeremy Parria from the All You Can Eat website speak about Customizing the Cow, New Trends in Cross-Platform Web Optimization. Fashion editor Michelle Bilodeau addresses the topic 10 Tips for Catching and Keeping an Editor's Attention. These presentations are from the SNAG Professional Development Seminar that takes place each year during the SNAG conference. The presentation sponsors are SNAG, the Society of North American Goldsmiths, and MJSA, Manufacturing Jewelers and Suppliers of America. Look for all 6 presentations from Sacred Cow, Purple Cow, Cash Cow on the Professional Development Seminar page. There are 2 locations, and the links are really long, so this slide has 2 tiny URLs for finding this information. There are 21 SlideShare presentations with audio from past professional development seminars, in addition to a selection of handouts. This information is available for the arts and crafts community on the Professional Development Seminar page found on the SNAG website and my website. Ask Harriet offers additional material on many of the topics developed during the PDS. Contact me anytime with comments, questions, or suggestions for future professional development seminar topics.